Good afternoon, good morning, or good night, depends upon where you are in this world. I'm Bill Gustin with the Miami-Dade Fire Rescue Department, and welcome to this month's Humpday Hangout. Before I introduce our panelists, I want to give a shout out to my own department, which I'm very proud of what we're going to be doing this next month in June. We are going to have a safety stand down, which is like a conference with some great training, and I'm going to have my boss, Chief Bert Cantella, explain a little bit more about that a little bit later on in the program. I want you to consider this scenario. You have a fire in a row house. It's 2 stories in the front. When you walk around to the Charlie side, it's 3 stories in the rear. In other words, it has a walkout type of basement. The fire is known to be in the basement. The engine company stretches a hose line, charges it at the front door, and advances it towards the interior stairway that leads to the basement. The intention is to either descend the stairs or at least protect that stairway from fire extension. At the same time, a truck company takes the Charlie side of the building and opens up that basement. Either breaks a sliding glass door, breaks a window, forces a door. Maybe it's with the intention of ventilating, maybe it's with the intention of forcible entry just to make entrance. But all too often, what is the result? The result is that air gets into that basement and intensifies an oxygen deficient fire and creates a flow path that results in a fireball that rolls up that stairway and burns the engine company. That's just one of many scenarios that we'll be discussing today in a general sense. And our panelists are going to discuss how, in their own experience, they time truck company operations, which include ventilation and forcible entry, with engine company operations to make sure that it is done in a timely and coordinated fashion. I want to thank our sponsor, Key Hose. That's keyfire.com. Every month I make the same endorsement. You cannot get better hose than Key. I use it every shift. I have my hands on that hose every shift. I love their top of the line Key Combat Ready. I challenge you to try to kink that hose. It's just almost unkinkable. So I want to thank Key for sponsoring the Hangout. I'm coming to you today from the training library at Miami-Dade Fire Rescue Training Center headquarters. I'm going to show you behind me here. I'm in fire engineering heaven. We've got fire engineerings way back, well, way before Chief Cantella was born. There's Chief Cantella right there, and there's Captain Nick Morgado. There we go. And I'll mention some of these past editions that you should probably avail yourself to. So we have an extensive library here. I also have my lucky squad with me today. That's a 1954 auto car from the Chicago Fire Department. That's what my dad rode as a firefighter. He was on Squad 2. This happens to be a replica of Squad 9, but that's my lucky squad. And we're going to start with Captain Mike. Captain Mike, could you introduce yourself, sir?
Good afternoon, Bill. How are you? Mike Dugan. I'm a retired captain from the New York City Fire Department, and I am glad to be here. And I'm looking forward to a good discussion.
And you're missing something there, Captain Mike.
Yes, I am.
And it's getting hard to get used to it. It's but could you explain why you are missing your
Sure.
fixture that you have usually in front of your face?
Well, I'm starting to get a little beach fuzz back. I've got a football mustache right now. It's 11 hairs on each side fighting. I am starting to grow my mustache back. What happened is I shaved my head and my mustache for St. Baldrick's, for kids with cancer, to raise money for kids with cancer. And I made a pledge that if we raised over 10 grand, I would appear at FDIC without a mustache. I've been at FDIC for 22 years straight, and I have never not had a mustache. And this year I came to FDIC without a mustache. And I'm going to show you a little picture here. That is my brother Paul and his youngest son, Chris. Chris just turned 15. Chris is a cancer survivor and has more metal in him than I do. And he's got a prosthetic. Half his femur is prosthetic. His knee and part of his fib are a prosthetic that grows with him through magnets. And it comes out of our servicemen in Iraq and Afghanistan, the technology. It's amazing. Chris is a cancer survivor. And when his hair came back, he used to have kind of a dirty blonde hair, and it came black and curly. And he decided to come up to New York to pay it forward and shave his head for kids with cancer. My brother grew that beard that looked like Santa Claus. So people would donate to see him get that off. A lot of people, including my sister-in-law, paid big money to see him get that off. So our group raised over $12,000 for childhood cancer research. So,
and your brother needs to come to Hemingway Days, and they have a contest for the person that looks most like Ernest Hemingway.
Yes.
Your brother looks like the old man in the sea. He looks like Ernest Hemingway. So
absolutely,
that's great, Mike. I'm glad you're with a Mr. Liggins, sir.
How are you doing? I think your connection might be a little wonky, Bill. You're cutting out. I'm Darrell Liggins. I'm a captain in the San Francisco Bay Area in the city of Oakland. This is my 24th year in the fire service. I started in a suburb of San Francisco, Redwood City. So that was a smaller job. And then 7 years into my career, I jumped across the bay over to Oakland, where I work on an engine company there.
Very good, Darrell. All right,
and
how's the connection now?
It seems pretty good.
Okay.
And I'll tell you, if I ended up at a row frame building, I definitely took a wrong turn somewhere out of the firehouse. We have no row frames in our city. And it is interesting with this panel to talk about these type of fires and construction, because the construction from city to city is so vastly different. It's really interesting to talk about.
Well, Darrell, that has to do with the brilliance of the moderator of this Humpday Hangout, that we have a very diverse group here from coast to coast, Darrell. So that's all by design. That didn't come by accident. And one of the most, speaking of diverse, the next fella here is from Las Vegas. And would you go ahead and introduce yourself, sir?
Yes, brothers and sisters. Captain Clark Lamping from the Clark County Fire Department here in Southern Nevada. Most of you know it as Las Vegas. 19 years on the job, 8 of them as a captain. Most of my career, about 12 out of the 19 years, I've worked right on Las Vegas Boulevard, where we've got some of those expensive property in the state of Nevada. And currently I'm at, I mentioned Station 11. Right now I'm at Station 11. In 2020, Las Vegas Raiders Stadium is going to go right on top of Station 11, so I'm standing in line. I already got front row tickets.
Hit me where it hurts.
50-yard line. So, yeah, it's going to be in the next 2 years. My first in is going to drastically change. We're seeing for sale signs up and down all of these old stock yards and all these old warehouses. They're trying to sell them all, knock them down. In fact, just last week we had a fire. We had a big piece of property, like a 15-acre piece of property, and just so happens to be right next door to the lot that Raider Stadium's going on. And on this 15, they had used to be a Mexican restaurant, and then from the Mexican restaurant it went to a live music club. It's been vacant for 10 years. And the day after they signed the contract, they bought that property for Raider Stadium, $77 million. The very next night, this nightclub caught on fire and damn near burned it to the ground. So coincidental, I might have waited 2 or 3 nights to set my place on fire to improve the property value, but these guys didn't have that much foresight. They wanted that property gone. So it's going to be a very interesting few years.
My friend Jeff Shoup says, yeah, somebody went in there and just accidentally spilled 15 gallons of gasoline.
Well, I'll tell you what.
How's my signal coming in now, Darrell?
It seems good. The day that
Okay,
they
we're
made that announcement, I got a text from a friend that also works for you guys of this photo.
Oh, right. Hey, Sin City. Nice.
It really rubbed it in. You could take the Raiders, but you can't take the history. A matter of fact, my mom in the 60s was one of the original Raiderettes.
Oh, wow.
Really?
Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, you got your mom's good looks, Darrell.
Ah,
And speaking of good looks, I'm going to take this opportunity to introduce Chief Bert Quintella, Battalion Chief, Miami-Dade Fire Rescue Department, who is going to tell us a little bit about our safety stand down next month. Chief Quintella, you can take the center stage, sir.
Doing? You guys got me? Signal good?
Yeah, how are you doing?
Awesome. Good, good. I want to start by thanking Captain Gusson for giving me the opportunity to kind of give you guys a heads up on what we're doing. We're very proud of the initiative and the support that we received for this. One of our biggest supporters since last year when we really started this was Captain Gusson, and he continues to be, and that's much appreciated, Cap. National Safety Stand Down, if some of you are not familiar with it, it's a joint initiative by the International Association of Fire Chiefs and the National Volunteer Fire Council. The goal with it is to highlight health and safety issues for fire and EMS personnel, and through basically training and education is to minimize those numbers of injuries and reduce line of duty deaths. Last year, I've been the department safety chief for a little bit over a year now, and last year was the first year we really had an initiative structured, to do it. We hosted 7 classes. I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Over 4 days, and we had over 175 students, and all the classes were free. We had the biggest showing in the region, and in speaking to other departments and stuff, we are coordinating this year and hosting training that's going to be over close to 30 classes. And like Captain Gusson mentioned, all the classes will be free, and the majority of the classes, the participants will receive CEUs from the state for recertification for instructor and or instructor. So it's been quite an ordeal putting this together. The dates will be June 20th to the 23rd. It's going to be a 4-day conference. Like I said, we're at about 30 right now, and one of the aspects of it, which has been really good, all the instructors are coming in on their own time to deliver presentations for this, and we pretty much are covering every aspect of the fire service, from the health and wellness components, EMS, TRT, hazmat, behavioral health. Captain Gusson here is going to do at least one day, maybe more, of some tactic stuff, and obviously building construction. So we will get the word out, and we'll share it with him so he can share it with anybody interested in attending. Like I said, June 20th to the 23rd, and that's pretty much what we got, Cap.
Well, thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm very, very proud of that. Yeah, where would we get the information if we want to avail ourselves of this conference?
We're still finalizing a few of the classes. Like I said, we're very close to 30 right now. As soon as it's done, I will share it with Captain Gusson, and he can distribute it. If not, we will get the information out. I don't know what means you can suggest, Cap, as far as getting the information out.
I think that Bill Carey, if you're watching, I think we can get this on the fire engineering website, the information, and people living in the region here can avail themselves.
I can give you my email address.
All right,
we'll see.
Right,
we'll see who could get that. So
yeah,
write it down.
We'll get it, and we'll get it on the fire engineering web. I'm sure that Bill's watching, and I hear you loud and clear, Bill. We're not going to talk about any specific NIOSH report. But in order to be a responsible fire officer, and what I mean by responsible is responsible to your department, to yourself, to your family, and to your crew, you have to be a student of the fire service. And part of that, large part of that, is studying NIOSH reports. Now, keep one thing in mind about NIOSH reports. You're never going to see a NIOSH report that says, well, The Miami-Dade Fire Department did everything right on this fire. Their tactics were right. Their risk-benefit analysis was correct. Their incident command system was prudent. Their breathing apparatus and training was up to date. It was just an unfortunate, tragic accident that could not be avoided. You will never read a NIOSH report like that. So remember that. Hindsight is 20/20. But let's learn from other people's tragedies. Otherwise, these firefighters would have died in vain. Unfortunately, one of the causes, there's a pattern that I'm going to ask Captain Clark to talk about, a pattern of firefighters that have died in the line of duty because of lack of coordination between engine company and truck company operations. Clark, you have some pretty compelling statistics.
I do, sir. I was just reading a recent NIOSH report on a line of duty death, and NIOSH went back and evaluated multiple NIOSH reports previous to this one, and they determined that they can attribute, with the new science and technology, they can now attribute 15 deaths to flow path and improper ventilation on the fire ground. Back then, years ago, they didn't have that technology, they didn't have that science that we have now, but NIOSH actually went back and reevaluated the line of duty deaths, and they said that at least 15 line of duty deaths can be directly attributed to improper ventilation and firefighters getting trapped working in the flow path. So I thought that was very good foresight on their part to go back and reevaluate the documents they had already created. So I thought that was really impressive.
Now, Clark, do you know of those 15, are most of those some purposeful ventilation or window failures from heat? That could have
I know of 2 that were purposeful ventilations, and 1 at least was a window failure. But yeah, so I'm assuming it's all for both accidental and intentional flow path.
And fellas, you'd have to have your head under a rock for the last 10 years not to be aware of the research that's been done by Underwriters Laboratories. I'm speaking specifically of their ventilation studies. And when I say ventilation, understand we're talking about any opening that we make in the building. It's just incidental. You're going to have ventilation. And in our modern petrochemical environment, where just about everything in a dwelling or any building is made of petrochemical-based materials, that fire is burning with a voracious appetite for oxygen, and burning incompletely, and burning with a lack of oxygen until we make an opening. When we make an opening in a fire that is ventilation limited or ventilation controlled, in other words, it's deprived of oxygen, it begs the question, what is going to reach the fire first? Us with a hose line so we can get water on the fuel that is vaporizing these gases, or the oxygen that is flowing in behind us that's going to make this fire intensify? It's never been more critical to time the engine company operations with the truck operations, especially when we're talking about opening up a building, ventilating a building. Captain Mike, could you relate an experience either that you had yourself or your department where perhaps a lack of coordination between engine and truck ops resulted in an undesirable outcome?
Yeah, I can, Bill. There are a couple of different ones that come to mind, but when talking about these things, we have to be a little careful because we don't want to speak ill of people who have made mistakes on the fire ground. So I think more importantly, I will talk about, we've had fires where things have gotten away from us. People have been on the other side of the hallways. We have had fatal fires, and we have adapted with that. The fire department now brings the KO curtain to go outside of buildings, and it does not have to be a high rise. Some of our fatal fires have been in 6-story buildings on the 4th floor where they are in a wind-driven environment. I mean, your personal size up, the start of, you do a fire size up from receipt of alarm, but you do a personal size up every day. Is the wind blowing? Am I going out? Is it 5 degrees out? Is it 95 degrees out? Going to be different in your firefight, depending on what the conditions are. You have to do a size up of the weather every day, where the wind is coming from. Is there a heavy wind blowing? Okay, what's going on? These are all part of what you have to do. And then you have to have your tactics have to be in line with your weather conditions, your manpower, and everything else. And that's one of the things that I think we have in the FDNY have gotten into, that our tactics are in line with what's going on. We get announcements in the morning of the current weather conditions, what the winds are for the day, what to be expected. And we also know, if you go in some of the buildings that Clark has, you go up in some of these higher rise buildings, you go up higher, the wind is going to be totally different up above the 10th or 12th or the 15th floor. This is going to happen all the time. And I think Darrell sees the same thing in some of the buildings in Oakland. So you have to understand where you're going, what the current conditions are, and what your manpower is.
Mike, can you allude to the changes that the FDNY has made, in part, large part, due to research, in terms of opening up the bulkhead door, the stairway bulkhead door, where it used to be automatic, and now I understand it is not automatic anymore?
It's not automatic anymore. The roofman has to get permission from the incident commander. It used to be automatically. You vented the bulkhead door to relieve the public hallway. But again, you are creating a flow path. You are giving it someplace to go. If our people aren't in the proper position, they don't have controls of the door, and just say the apartment door is left open, depending on where the apartment door is on that fire floor, you could be drawing that fire towards your brother or sister firefighters. So the roofman is not popping the bulkhead door and chocking it open. We used to go up, pop the bulkhead door, and break the top hinge so the door couldn't close on us, and then go up and take the skylight over the bulkhead to give it more ventilation. And we used to do that all the time. And then I remember guys telling me, well, you know what? When I was a young fireman up in Harlem, don't take the glass skylight unless you need to, because then you create a vacant building, because the rain is always going to leak. So if it's a nice building, the people in there, the building's going to turn to crap because of that. So again, we have changed our procedures dramatically. Okay.
Mike, I admire the FDNY, and because a department with that much tradition, that much pride, esprit de corps, if they can take a hard look at themselves and critically look at the way they're doing things and say, hey, maybe knowing what we know now due to research, due to change of fuel loads in buildings and construction, maybe there is a better, safer way of doing things. And that's one thing about the FDNY, is if they, a department that big with that much tradition, can take a hard look at themselves and constructively change the way they do things, then I think we all need to be receptive to that. And that's why even us old timers are students of the fire service. Darrell, you want to?
Bill,
yes, sir.
One other thing on that.
Yes, sir.
Because the old adage, fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, shame on you. Well, fool me once, and I let the same thing happen in a fire, shame on me. Because if something happens and I don't change, if I got one of my people hurt, injured, or just put in danger, and I don't look at that and say, did I do something wrong, and figure out for me, I'm not a leader. I'm not a boss.
It's an immense responsibility. I'm in my last few years of being on this job, and frankly and honestly, every day when I drive to the firehouse, every third day, I'm on a 24-hour shift, I pray that something bad doesn't happen on my watch. And it's an immense responsibility. And, you know, when I was young and stupid and carefree, I did some crazy things and didn't think anything of it. And it was just dumb luck. Well, sooner or later, your dumb luck can run out. And being a fire officer, and it's not just, it's bad enough when you get yourself hurt, but it's worse when you are responsible for people and they get hurt under your supervision. It's an immense responsibility.
And
when we
Bill,
have a bad day at the office, Captain Mike, it's a bad day.
and I thank God, because I was young and dumb, just like we all were, but I had officers who protected me and saved me. And I'll never forget, one of my first captain wouldn't allow me to go up a flight of stairs, to go up to the floor above, which was our assigned responsibility. And he said, absolutely not. They don't have water on the fire, and the fire's in a shaft. He goes, the fire's going to be coming at you from 2 different directions, and you'll have nowhere to go. And he was holding me by the collar, and I'll never forget it. Come on, that's our responsibility. It's not our responsibility to die, Michael. And
I hear you, brother.
Yep.
Darrell, any experiences with a lack of coordination? I mean, I'm not asking you to air your dirty laundry in public. It doesn't have to be your department. And also, Darrell, before we went on the air, you were mentioning a video that you saw from a Bay Area fire department where there was good coordination.
Oh,
could you allude to that, please?
Tremendous coordination. I was very, proud of the things I saw. We all see videos on YouTube and Monday Morning Quarterback, and unfortunately, a lot of people want to, write some disparaging comments about the actions of these people trying to do the best job they know of. But this was a video where things were just really well put together. It was a city of Salinas, California, a small town next to Santa Cruz, very active fire department. And in this video of, I don't know if it's going around YouTube or what, I saw it on Facebook, a friend sent to me. The truck is the first one to the fire apartment, 2-story apartment building. Fire is on the 2nd floor. It's an exterior access, so an exterior hallway. We call it garden style apartment out here. And the truck firefighter got to the door, forced the door, immediately reached in and closed the door that was venting out heavy, dense black smoke. Waited for the line, had the patience to wait for the line to get charged, flowing good. Reopened the door for that engine, and as the engine started making the push, then he started venting the rest of the windows there in the front as they were getting water on the fire. It was a very successful fire attack, and I thought that coordination, the coordination for the most part, to me is the truck and having the patience to do things at certain times. And had that member open the door and just left it open or taken the window early, it would have definitely intensified this fire tremendously. And if someone's still laying in the front room, it could have ended up being a fatal incident.
I'm very proud of my battalion chief, Todd Garafalo. We had a fire not long ago, and remember our medic units are staffed by an officer and 2 firefighters, and they do truck work in addition to EMS. And they've got every truck tool except ladders on those rigs. We had a fire where the first 2 companies to arrive were these medic rescue squads, and he had the crews force the doors, but unlike in previous years, say even 10 years ago, once the doors were forced, just as you're talking about, Darrell, reclose the door, control the door until we've got a charged hose line up to that door. Now that is a direct result of what we've learned from the research from Underwriters Laboratory, and it has to do with the door control. Mr. Lamping, sir, Captain Lamping, would you like to weigh in on this? Any experiences?
Yes, I would, Cap. Out on the West Coast, truck company operations are really heavily roof operations. We send the first dude truck, goes to the roof and performs vertical ventilation most of the time. Close to 90% of the time, that's how we operate. When I first got on a truck company, we didn't really worry about coordinating with fire attack. That is a new term when we talk about vertical ventilation, coordinate with fire attack. We would go up and we have the attitude of, look, any kind of ventilation we do is going to help. It's going to provide a better environment for any victims there might be, and it's going to improve the conditions for fire attack. You're going to be able to find the fire. So we'd get up there and we'd start cutting without any recourse whatsoever, start cutting. The only time we would contact interior crews is when we're getting ready to push the roof through, make sure no one's standing under the hole we're gonna make. So that was it. We're just concerned with hitting people in the head. We're not concerned with intensifying the fire. We're not concerned with creating a flow path. That was 10 years ago, like we talked about. Now it is a strict coordination of, we don't do anything. We make the cut. We don't push the hole through until we are completely confident that the engine company is ready for us. It is on paper. On paper, it's fantastic. But I'll tell you what. First couple minutes of the incident, radio traffic's a problem. It's a problem getting out. It's a problem coordinating with each other. And on top of it, we're on the roof. We have air packs on the roof. We have chainsaws running. It's difficult. It's difficult to do. So it's a lot of conversation between truck and engine. When the engine's underneath fighting fire and the engine captain hears saws running, he knows the roof's coming in. He might give us a preemptive, hey, we're ready for you whenever you want to get that hole in. We're good. We're good. Truck company, same thing. I might not be able to contact them directly, but I'm listening to the radio. I'm listening to what fire attack's talking to command. And when I hear water running, when I can feel the water running in the building, I know we're good. And so we pop the roof then. But again, like we've all talked about, it's completely different. We operate completely differently now than we did 10, 15 years ago when we just started opening up buildings with no recourse whatsoever.
It begs the question, a truck company goes to the roof and they cut a hole and flames belch out of that hole and just keeps burning and burning and burning. You don't see any steam. You don't see any stream. You don't see the fire get any smaller. The fire's getting worse. Of course it's getting worse. You've created a flow path. You've opened the flue to a wood-burning stove, basically, by opening up that roof. You've got an intake down low and an exhaust up high coming out of that roof. It stands to reason it's going to intensify the fire. We're at a halfway point here in our little session. I want to give a shout out to Key. That's keyfire.com. It's the hose that I use. I use the Key Combat Ready. My department, I'm very proud to say, does not go cheap on hose. We take it very seriously, and it's your lifeline. Your hose line is your lifeline. You need to have a hose that has good flow capabilities, great kink resistance, heat and abrasion resistance. And in the Key Combat Ready has every bit of that. For you lovers of the Cleveland load, which I am not, I mean, there is an application for it, but you lovers that are infatuated with the Cleveland load, that's a good test to put your hose in, because you're going to have adequate pressure and you're going to have inherently kink resistant hose. The Key Combat Ready is up to the task if that's what you choose to use on your department. So thank you, Key, for sponsoring us. And I'd like to relate an experience. I was off this day. My company was first in on a stucco on wood frame house where there were boards on the doors and windows. It was boarded up. It was vacant. And it was a very small house, but it was very closely in a densely urban area with exposures very close on either side of similar structures. Our medic rescues get on the scene and immediately start cutting and removing boards from the doors and windows. The building was pushing heavy smoke with no visible flame. Heavy smoke under pressure. Again, no visible flame. What do you think the results were when they started to remove those boards from the doors and the windows? This thing lit off like a Roman candle, fully involved with fire impinging on exposures on the Delta and Bravo sides. Lack of coordination. If that happened today, I know on my department, at least in my battalion, that wouldn't happen. We've got more discipline, we've got more control. We got more coordination between the companies that are performing the truck functions and the engine companies that are there to suppress the fire. So, you know, we've learned. The other one is the strip shopping center, where you get there at night and you've got soot and moisture on the windows, and the show windows are warm or hot to the touch. It stands to reason. When you break that glass, or you pull a lock cylinder on that aluminum and glass storefront door and make an opening, you're waking up a sleeping dragon. And it begs the question, what's going to get there first, the air coming in that door or the water from your hose line? And if the timing isn't right, you're making things worse. You're not making them better.
Bill,
Yes, sir.
If we're, I hear some other feedback. If we're looking at the fire service as a whole, most people do not have truck companies. So the coordination of the truck and engine is a foreign thing. Most engine companies are doing their own forcible entry and ventilation. And I think the one thing I took away with a lot of the studies of the flow path was really, if once the engine opens the door, if, you know, open the door, work on that forcible entry. But once that door is open, if the line's not charged, to close the door. Because we think about ventilation a lot as exhaust, where we are exhausting the smoke through windows or vertical openings, but the intake is having a tremendous effect. It's hand in hand. You can put a larger exhaust on your car, but you really have to add a blower or some type of turbocharger or something if you really want to intensify this horsepower. We're adding horsepower.
Darrell, I couldn't agree.
We're adding a lot of horsepower to this fire once we open the intake.
Darrell, every fire has to have an intake and an exhaust. Now, if you gave the fire a choice, the fire would like to have an intake down low and an exhaust out high. Now, if there's only one opening in a building that's on fire with a fire in it, that one opening is going to have to be the intake down low and the exhaust up high. That's called a bidirectional flow. And somewhere in between, there's a neutral plane. The problem with that is that the engine can advance down low below that thermal layer of that smoke and heat that's venting out of the building. What happens if the window fails opposite where they're entering, especially if it happens to be on the windward side? That now becomes 100% exhaust, and they are in the flow path with fire in their face. And I think it's incumbent on every fire officer to consider that there's an intake and an exhaust on every fire. And could I possibly end up in that exhaust if conditions change, if the wind changes direction, if a window breaks, if a door is open? Those are all things that you have to be very, very careful about, in my humble opinion. Is Sam Hiddle with us? Sam Hiddle from Wichita, Kansas. I see he's got his little logo up there. He's on duty. And as I mentioned before we went on the air, Sam, there he is. Sam, why are you on duty do you work every Wednesday, Sam? You're always on duty, or do you work double duty, or what is the reason that you're on duty every Wednesday when we have these hump day hangouts? Not that that's a bad thing, Sam.
It's because he's married and the firehouse is the happiest place he has. Trust me, I'm there, Sam. I know.
No comment.
Sam, I have to compliment you on a most excellent class on forcible entry at FDIC. I've never known anybody that could steal another person's material like you do, and take my articles and rework them and put them so eloquently. Also, the bow tie, Sam, that is chick magnet material. That is just, I'm glad there were no females in that class, Sam, because that bow tie would have been a tremendous distraction. So I'm hoping that maybe one of these months that you would grace us with wearing a bow tie. Sam, you know what we're talking about here, brother? We're talking about coordination between engine and truck companies. I don't want to mention any NIOSH reports specifically, but we know that there's been, as Clark has alluded to, several line of duty deaths directly attributed to a lack of coordination with engine and truck. Would you like to weigh in on this topic, Sam? And also, go ahead and introduce yourself, sir.
Samuel Hiddle, lieutenant with Wichita Fire, and the one that gets abused on this Google Hangout.
I think we're losing you there, Sam.
I don't have a very good connection.
Okay. Well, we hear you good now. Do you want to weigh in on the coordination of engine and truck company operations? And like Darrell says, Darrell's absolutely spot on right. It's there may be no truck company, but somebody's doing the truck company operations. So Darrell, you're absolutely spot on correct. Go ahead, Sam.
No, absolutely. In fact, we getting that initial vertical ventilation or horizontal ventilation, if we don't have a truck on scene, then we expect our engine officers to address that in one way or another. Yeah,
and I think part of that is it begins with a 360 degree size up if you can. But part of that size up is if you're doing a 360, if there's any perceptible breeze blowing in your face when you're on the Charlie side, that really is a serious consideration if your company, your engine company, is going to make a entrance on the Alpha side. And it's you constantly in the back of your mind got to be thinking, could I change the direction of the flow path on this fire? And if I do, will it have a negative or positive effect? Well, what we like to do is we like to vent as close to the seat of the fire as possible. And in an ideal world, on the leeward side. Well, we can't always do that. We've got Miami-Dade County where we got a world full of burglar bars. We have buildings that are either legally or illegally divided up into single room occupancies and efficiencies. And it's not always going to be that case. So it's that's one of the reasons why we're not my department are not real big on positive pressure ventilation for fire attack, because there's too many variables that we cannot control. But Sam, it is a serious consideration. And again, every fire officer has to be thinking, am I in the intake or am I in the exhaust of a fire? And could conditions change where I end up in the exhaust, and what would be the result? Another one is I got a good friend of mine that's now a battalion chief. There was a strong wind out of the northwest in February of one year, and pretty cool by Miami standards. And it was a row of townhouses. They made entrance through the Alpha side, and the sliding glass door failed on the Charlie, and there was that strong breeze was on the Charlie side, and they ended up with a ball of fire in their faces. And thank God they were not that far in. They all got burned, but they backed out. You know, and you know, when we talk about these things, it's easy to second guess everybody. I know that. And I second guess myself all the time. But we have to learn from that. And part of that size up is determining that wind direction.
I think we can also, and one of the things we teach is size up as we're venting. We don't want guys to go up and just blast the middle of the window with the roof hook. We want them to kind of focus on that upper corner where we can hopefully just get a small section to come out. You know, if we get vent ignition, or we should expect a push, but it's just kind of wisping because the wind's pushing the smoke back in, then we need to rethink what we're doing. And we need to coordinate that. And we either need to take it early before the engine gets there so it does what it does, or we need to take it late after they can adequately cool it. Because how many times we go into a fire, we knock it down and it flares right back up. If we, let me turn this off.
Well, maybe you need to respond to that call, Sam. I don't know. You can turn it off. But you have that luxury, Sam? You just pick and choose the calls you want to go on?
Every show.
If that was the case, I'd only go to fires. I'd forget about those EMS calls. Radio off. Drop them like yesterday's newspaper. Just kidding, for God's sake. I'll get somebody upset here. Go ahead, Sam.
No, I was just saying that, sometimes if there is wind, then we may need to delay it. And that needs to be coordinated where we need to make sure that we have the room adequately cooled. The engine's going to take a little bit more abuse, but before we take that window and let it flare back up with our guys inside the room.
Sam, I think that concept of you taking a little bit of glass in the upper corner of the window and then judging its effect to you, before you take the rest of the glass, to see if the smoke is returning into the building. You have vent point ignition, is brilliant. And that's what the Wichita, Kansas Fire Department teaches. Well, kudos to them. That's brilliant.
Well, it doesn't always work out. I mean, sometimes you have severely stressed or heat stressed glass, it's going to go. But that's what we ideally shoot for. Yeah.
Darrell, any other thoughts?
Yeah. So, as Clark was saying, here in the West Coast, there's a lot of departments that are heavily vertical vent oriented, as opposed to some other parts of the country that do a lot more horizontal ventilation, like Sam's talking about. And when it comes to vertical ventilation, it's time consuming to throw the ladder, to get the saw, to climb up there and make this cut and punch down the ceiling. I have not had a truck cut a hole as I'm attacking the room. We always beat the hole. I remember coming in the fire service, hearing these stories of as the truck's cutting the hole and we get this lift and we're putting it out. I don't know. I don't think it's from lack of fires, but I just haven't really experienced that. I do get a lot of relief once the room's out and they knock the hole and now we're relieving that pent up heat. But it is time consuming. But horizontal ventilation is extremely fast and can easily be done too early. And I think that's when you're going around and you're just going to break out a window, that there has to be some patience, some thought of the wind direction, and waiting for the proper moment to take that glass, because it's very fast and effective. With that said, I don't have a lot of experience in that position. I talked about videos that were very successful. The FDNY has a number of videos where I was thoroughly impressed with a member waiting patiently on the fire escape and then at some moment taking the glass. So I guess my question is, for Mike, is there a specific radio communication, or are they listening, or are they looking at the smoke or listening for the sound of the stream? At what point is that member going to take the glass?
The member usually asks permission. I'm at the window. Are you ready for the glass? And as an officer, I have said, no, hold up. We're not in position. We're not ready. We don't have water yet, or whatever else. And they sit there and they wait. And then the officer will say, take the glass.
And that's the engine officer.
Usually it's the truck, because the truck goes up and finds the fire. Because of our building sizes and wings and other things, the truck finds the fire and alerts the engine. Because if you stretch up like a double wing building, like an H-type, you go up the wrong wing because that's where they have smoke, then you're SOL. You don't get the fire, because the second dude's going to go up the other wing and they'll get the fire before you. So you wait. The engine waits in the lobby until the truck finds the fire. Then they stretch. So now we found the fire. They're going to be, it might take them a minute or two to stretch the hose. So you're waiting. Usually what we're doing now is closing the door. We go in, if we have reports of people in there and the conditions allow it, we will go in, do our search. And then when the engine comes in, we open up the door, tell them what room is on fire. They call down, and then when they're ready, we go take the glass. As soon as they open up the line, take the glass, and away we go. But the members are now trained not to take the windows until they are told to take the glass. In the old days, when I first started, as soon as you got there, you took the glass. You tried to, the other thing it did is it lightened it up a little bit. You could belly in under the window and get in there and do a quick search of a room or two. You can't do that anymore because of the conditions of the fire. So it's all a point of it. And the other thing, and Sam talked about it and everything else, is the wind, knowing the wind. And we send guys now to the floor above to open up the apartment door and open up a window. And if they get that flow path, it's going to be the same flow path on the fire floor. They communicate with the officer. We're going to get a flow path. We're going to get wind blowing in here. All right, don't take any glass. Don't take any glass. And we're really good because I've been on a wind-driven fire where the wind has failed the windows, and it was horrendous. 7 people passed away. We had 7 DOAs, and we had a 12-year-old girl jump from 32 floors. Can you imagine the mother? The mother was my first roast. She was in the room. Poor woman was incinerated, but before she died, she forced a 12-year-old daughter to jump 32 floors. That's not going to work. That fire, because this is very important to me too, that fire, my officer at the time was really, really, really smart. And he had us force the adjoining apartment and had the engine come in, and we breached a hole in the wall and got the water in through the hole in the wall in the adjoining apartment to flow with the air into it. Now they use the floor below nozzle, the same thing. A different way to get water in from the outside, going with the airflow to put that fire out. It was brilliant at the time, but the door was rattling in the wind, the lock was melted through, and the peephole was melted through. And I'll never forget, this was back in the days of the irons. There were no hydrorams and everything. And I was working with a good friend of mine, and he goes, "You better hit this thing hard and fast because we got to get through this door." And he didn't quite say it that nicely, but we got through that door, and my officer was brilliant and said, "Poke a hole, throw the water in there with the 2.5-inch line because we're not going to beat it through that door. Fire's going to come right back at us." We had tried down that hole twice with 2.5s, and both times we got blown off the floor.
So, and when you're talking about spraying in water from adjoining apartments, for those listening that don't know, in 2006, 3 weeks, I believe, after I was promoted to a lieutenant, me and my crew all ended up in the burn center. And so and since we're talking about coordination, there was just a lack of coordination between companies as a whole, not the truck and engine or whatever, but it was what you call Colliers Mansion type condition, hoarder conditions in the apartment. The engine couldn't make its way in. We arrive on the second alarm, and I'm in the hallway on the 3rd floor, and the fire's good. It's venting out of 4 windows, but because they couldn't make the push into the apartment, they took a line into the adjoining apartment, broke out a hole, used a combination pattern, which drove a lot of air and just drove the fire instantaneously over all of us. And I think it was a good move to use the adjoining apartment, breach the wall, and get some water in there. But had that been communicated, okay, we're not making it, let's change the tactics. Close the door closed, let's go ahead and do this. Maybe water from the outside too. And then you could open the door and go finish it off. But
it's an excellent point, because what a lot of people don't understand about Colliers Mansions, and I've had quite a few fires in them, is you go in there, these people have so much stuff that you are now crawling up. You are 2 to 3 feet above the floor on garbage, newspapers, magazines, rubbish, whatever else. You're now at a higher level. You are not down in the cool path of the floor. You cannot get low. I had one fire where the guys got the heck burnt out of them because they didn't realize they were crawling up this thing, and they were 3.5 feet off the floor on rubbish, so to speak. So it's really, really good.
Yeah.
Here's the other problem with those hoarder homes, like the Colliers Mansion. If the door opens in, you're not going to get the door completely open. You're going to have to use your body weight to force open the door a few inches to squeeze in, and then you're in this mess, this maze. Now it's time for you to get out. You had a problem with your mask, or you're low on air, and you go back to the same door and then try to use your strength in your arms to open up that door and get out, you may not be able to. In the course of trying to escape, the other thing is talk about a ventilation limited fire as you start to uncover these piles of smoldering material. You're just inviting rapid intensification of the fire. How far are you from your means of escape, and how long is it going to take you to get back out if you should get into trouble? It's you know, when I was a young guy, I looked forward to going to any fire. Now, man, if I never go to another hoarder house again, that'll be just fine with me. It seems like the older you get, the more selective you are with what kind of fires you want to go to. Sam, when you're my age, and what are you now? You're what, 21, Sam?
I hope, yeah, I wish.
16? Okay. Now, when you're my age, you won't be as you'll be a lot more selective about what kind of fires you want to go to. On a serious note, Sam, brilliant class on forcible entry. You talked a lot about the discipline of using the partner saw, using the leverage of levers. What I mean, inclined plane as the forks, the adds, using mechanical advantage, basically working smarter rather than harder. And I look forward to reading your articles in fire engineering on those topics. So good for you. And I got a reading assignment for you, Sam. You need to go to November 1996. What were you doing in November 1996?
Oh, nothing that I can remember.
Breastfeeding.
Okay. How much is too risk? Do your firefighters endanger themselves unnecessarily when a situation may not warrant it? Learn how to weigh the risks according to the occupancy and other factors, by Sam Hiddle. No, that was by Bill Guston. That was in 1996. There you have it. And oh, you asked where I was, Sam? Take a look, bro. I am in fire engineering heaven. Can you see it?
I can. I saw all of them.
I'm in a training center's library. So we've got all the back issues of fire engineering here and other magazines, but I'm not going to mention those. We're looking at about 3 minutes or so. I'd like to close this out. All right, Sam.
Squad 1 from Station 1 for fire.
Oh, Sam's decided not to go on that EMS run. Okay. Very good. All right. Well, thanks for staying with us, Sam. Okay. Captain Lamping, any closing thoughts on coordination between truck and engine companies?
Yes. Just a couple things real quickly. In one of the NIOSH reports that I was reading, the NIST did some research on this NIOSH report, and NIST determined that, I wrote the numbers down, that the fire actually traveled when the ventilation hole was open, the horizontal ventilation was traveled, the basement fire, that fire reached 1,500 degrees and was traveling at 18 miles an hour. And from the time they took out the glass, it was 1 minute before, in the basement, it was 1 minute before the fire was out of the front door. 1,500 degrees at 18 miles an hour. That's phenomenal. That is phenomenal fire growth and phenomenal fire spread. You're not going to outrun this. There's no way you can outrun this. I get a lot of information out of these NIOSH reports. Probably the #1 resource I use for fire training and for education are these NIOSH reports. I can't overemphasize how important they are in my career, and they should be in your career as well. They're free. They're easy to access on the website. Please take advantage of these resources that NIOSH provides to us as firefighters and fire officers. I'm done. Thank you very much for listening, and especially I guess we have some new followers in Sandusky, Ohio. Welcome, brothers. So I'll see you guys next month.
All right, Darrell, any closing thoughts, sir?
Well, not much comes to mind, but I do think that, you know, some of these coordination efforts are, you know, technical, and we need to use common language so things aren't getting mixed up, and have people understand you know, the benefits and you know, problems that can result if things are not properly coordinated. And I agree with Clark, you know, pick some NIOSH reports, read through them, watch videos. We're blessed with all these videos that I know we didn't have when some of us started our careers where we only had VHS tapes. But, you know, use those tools to watch fire behavior and pay attention to the fire behavior.
I couldn't agree more. Remember, there's an intake and an exhaust on every fire, and watch those videos and keep that in mind. The firefighters in the intake or in the exhaust. Captain Mike, any closing thoughts?
Well, I think VHS was something that grew when we were there, Bill. Do you remember doing them with slide trace?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. And then you'd get jammed up, and you'd have to take a butter knife and have to work out the slide. Yeah, I certainly remember that. Yeah.
Click. Yep.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
no, I think we covered a lot here. I think maybe we should do something next month or one of the following months on hoarder homes.
I think so, and I think we're going to get a guest.
Okay.
I think what's his name, Pennington.
Ryan Pennington, absolutely.
Yeah,
and
yeah. I think he's written some brilliant things on the hoarder homes, and we're gonna reach out to him if you're watching.
Okay. And we got a couple other people to reach out to, and we'll be keep an eye on what we're doing. The only other thing I would say is our good friend and boss, Bobby Halton's mom, wasn't doing too well. She's still not 100%. So if you can, when you say your prayers for Bobby's mom, we would all appreciate it. Just keep Mrs. Halton in your thoughts and prayers, because I know he's coming into town this weekend to see his mom. So I'm looking forward to getting a cup of coffee with him. But keep your thoughts and prayers with them. And for those who we didn't get to see at FDIC, hopefully we'll see you next year. It was the busiest FDIC I ever had, bro.
Yep. Yep. Well, that just about wraps it up. I want to thank our sponsor, Key. That's keyfire.com. You'll never find better hose anywhere. The Combat Ready is their top of the line. I swear by it because I use it every shift. I have my hands on it. You can't kink that hose. It has incredible flow capabilities, kink resistance, and durability in terms of heat resistance and abrasion resistance. So I can't recommend it highly enough. Key Combat Ready hose. I want to thank our brothers and sisters for really all over the world. I know that we have a lot of, when this is archived later in the day, our brothers in Australia tune in. Phil Pfaff, is that his name?
Path.
Phil? Path. Yeah, Path. And my brother Rick Owen in the Melbourne area. And they'll watch this later today, and I'm going to give them both a shout out. So until next month, may God bless you and keep you safe in this most noble profession. See you next month.